Have you ever walked in on a mishap in traffic? For example, maybe one car hits the other and all of a sudden somebody jumps out and the first thing they are saying is, do you know who I am? You know, that's courage, the bravery, you know, that whole attitude of shooting the first shot. Picture that and mirror it into a company operations, for example. The individuals within a company's structure that can say something like that are actually no other persons than the directors. Do you know who the director is? Like, do you understand the powers of a director? Do you understand the do's, like what the director can almost do and undo? He is so powerful. But behind the director, I'm not talking of directors. In fact, I've already done a video on different kind of directors, and I'm still going to shed more light on different kinds of directors because that video did not sufficiently deal with all the different stratas of directors that we actually have. But one thing that is coming to my mind basically is that behind the director is another powerful individual or a group of individuals or group of corporates that we might not necessarily see. Those are the shareholders. They are the string makers. They are the ones that pull the strings from behind the scene. You know, individuals that we do not necessarily see shouting on the rooftop and all that. If you ever find somebody shouting on the rooftop, trust me, it's not the shareholder, it's the director. It's the director because they are in charge of management of, the company. But what I want to basically talk about today is who has the power of removal of the director. In fact, I know that this video, when professional colleagues watch it, they might agree in some case, they might also not agree in another case because there are a lot of views around this. But one of the predominant views that is supported by the Companies and Allied Matters Act is the fact that it's the shareholders who have the right, who have the power to remove directors. And don't forget, when I'm talking about directors, I'm talking about directors who are on the documentation. When you are registering a company, you fill out the slot for directors, you fill out the slot for a shareholder. That slot of director that you fill out, those are the individuals I'm actually talking about. I'm not talking about the independent, executive, non-executive directors. I'm not talking about those guys. I'm not talking about, the advisory board. I'm not talking about those guys. I'm also not talking about the MD. Because when you look at the issues surrounding, or if you look at the case flow surrounding who the MD is, sometimes the managing director of a company could be employed by the board to come on board and play that role as an MD of the company. At other times, the MD can come from within the board of directors themselves. So you can have a situation where, for example, like I've said earlier on, you register a company, you see a list of directors. You can have a scenario where one person out of those individuals that are on the documentation of the company with the Corporate Affairs Commission rises out of the pack and becomes the managing director. He can also be fired by the board. And don't forget, like I said, the board of directors, the strength of every company flows from the shareholding capacity of the guys or of the individuals who actually calling sway in that particular company. So, for example, when you look at the MD, the managing director, for example, as an employee, you begin to ask yourself, what are the powers that he has? Of course, he's within a management position, and more often than not, the MD would actually be one of the individuals who can be appointed to the board. If he's appointed to the board, he has a different set of powers. If he's appointed to the board by the shareholders, he has a different set of powers. If he's an MD that is employed by the company, he also has a different set of powers. So when you're looking at the role of an MD, for example, the role of the managing director, you have to look at it from these two perspectives. Is he solely an employee? That's argument one. If he's not solely an employee, is he such a person that has been put into that position under the influence of the shareholders? So an MD would play two different roles. He may play the same role, but he would have different strengths. He would have different strengths based on how he became an MD. But that's basically not the major issue I want to actually talk about. But I just felt that it was important to create that explanation about who the MD is. How did the MD get into the company? Did he get in by virtue of an employment process, or did he get in due to the shareholders actually voting and all of those things? And during that vote, was it just a case of, okay, let him be the MD, or he was also made a director on the strength of the power vested in the shareholders? So there are different views. Corporate governance most of the time could have a sector-specific appeal. Like, for example, if you're looking at issues surrounding maybe certain kind of regulators now, like the central bank, for example, or maybe SEC, as the case may be. You know, there are different ways SEC will carry out a particular decision or a particular concern. There's also a different way the central bank will also carry out that same concern. Like the issue of the central bank, coming up and relieving the entire board of First Bank of their roles and duties and responsibilities and all of that. That whole issue surrounding that whole removal will be an issue for another day where we can actually discuss. And of course, your feedback will be very, very important. So what I just want to basically say right now is that my own view, some persons are of the view that if you put it in your articles of association that the board has the power to remove a director, that's another view. But some persons have also said that even if it's in your articles, that the CAMA, that's the Companies and Allied Matters Act, would supersede whatsoever is in your articles. You can decide to write anything within your articles, that's totally fine. But the Companies and Allied Matters, this is a point of view anyways, that the Companies and Allied Matters Act is actually already clear on that issue and has already vested that power with the shareholders. Some other people believe that, like I heard an argument where somebody said a court can also, a court can come into a company affairs and remove a director. That would depend on the case itself. If, for example, you've taken a company has actually, maybe an aggrieved party has taken that particular issue to a court for determination, it's an entirely different thing. But as far as removal, let's be very conscious about the word removal. I'm not talking about appointments here now. I'm talking about the power to remove. CAMA is very clear on that. There are several other sections within CAMA where people can infer certain other things or certain other powers or certain other individuals who can actually play that particular role. Some might say, okay, it's the board. Some might say in the articles of association. But the view that I want to stand with, I'm very sure many of my colleagues would also take this particular opinion, is that power is vested in the shareholders. It's a shareholder power, and it's not just a case of the shareholders maybe just sending out a memo or something and all that. It has to be, there's a lay down procedure for that. You need to have, the shareholders would need to have carried out that particular decision in an annual general meeting, for example, or in a general meeting through a special resolution, as the case may be. So this video doesn't end the talk, but I just wanted to introduce this subject matter. In the next video that we'll be putting up after this, especially as it has to do with who has the power to remove a director, we would be looking at the Companies and Allied Matters Act, if possible, where necessary, reading out the specific sections that are clear of ambiguities and deal specifically with this particular issue, so that you can have an understanding when next, maybe for example, you want to remove directors and all of that, you would understand the spirit behind that action. It's not just an action that takes place because you're excited about it, but there is a flow of it. Yeah, so this video is going to introduce that flow. In the next video, we'll be looking at what the Companies and Allied Matters Act says exactly. I'm sure that we've been able to introduce this subject matter, and of course, I know that many people might be having different thoughts. Any thoughts at all that you're having? If you think maybe a visiting professor to your company can remove a director, let me know. If you think a pastor can remove a director or an imam, let me know in the comment section. Any thoughts that you have at all as to how this particular removal can take place, I'll be very interested to know what your thoughts are. And don't forget, if you have to listen to this video over and over again, please do know that a lot is put into creating much of this content, just to see how we can influence the community of business people, and people can actually understand how the boardroom actually works. So much goes on within that particular space. And today, my own clarification is on a final note. When you're looking at the power of the director, look no further. Just look behind him. The shareholders are right behind.